G'day and welcome to Talking Leadership. Welcome to the second of the Australian Entrepreneurs podcast. Thanks for joining me. This is Eric Perez, your podcast host. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion with today's guests. They are the founders of TomKat Lionfish and TomKat Global Solutions. I'd like to welcome to the podcast Kath and Tom Long. I'm looking forward to a discussion with them around their experiences as Australian entrepreneurs. As always, I hope you enjoy the content. Thanks again, and over to Kath and Tom. Can I welcome Kath and Tom Long to the podcast? How are you guys?
Really good, thanks, Eric. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Eric. Yeah, nice to be on the program.
In my day job, I work for the Queensland Seafood Industry Association, and Kath and Tom have been members for quite some time, and I've been in the front seat, so to speak, of how their businesses have morphed over time, and that will lead quite nicely into a discussion around what you guys are doing with TomKat Global Solutions. But I'd like to get that down further into the podcast. So can I start by asking you both, and this is in the context of TomKat Global Solutions, what was your pathway individually, and I guess as an entrepreneurial couple, to becoming entrepreneurs in that space? And maybe for a bit of context, can you give the listeners a bit of a background to how TomKat Global Solutions started off?
Yes, thanks for the question, Eric. Before we answer that, I think you seem to find reluctant entrepreneurs listening to Alex last week. I think personally, Tom and I perceive ourselves more as innovators, or being in the innovation space at this point in time. And as Plato, I believe it was, once said, necessity is the mother of all invention. And for us, it was the move from selling our fish wholesale through cans to wanting to go direct to market, which was in 2016. And because we catch really premium reef species, we look after our fish with the respect it deserves and do really top quality stuff, it just felt wrong to be transporting such high quality product in a vessel such as polystyrene. So really it came from an environmental reasoning more so than entrepreneurial, I would say. So it was about finding the best vessel to transport our product direct to market, and there really was nothing available on the market at the time when we started looking at the beginning of 2018. So I guess the rest has just developed from there. I'm not sure if Tom wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I guess, and the interesting bit for me was, there wasn't anything on the market that really did match polystyrene thermally. So, it was a matter of looking at what the available options were, materials, etc., and coming up with a solution. And, that's evolved, and that's where we are now. So we're pretty pleased with that.
In your experience, is there a difference in your travels between what the leaders that you've met in the world that you work in and entrepreneurs that you've met?
For me, I'd say in my experience, which isn't huge, but I would say no to that. And I'd say probably for several reasons. Entrepreneurs do lead, as do leaders. But I guess it's really where the sight's set on that leadership. Like, entrepreneurs are leading to usually a financial goal often, and some point in the future, whereas leaders can often lead for no financial gain. So I guess there's a bit of a difference in that, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree, except I would phrase it as, yes, I think there is a difference, because I would say quite often an entrepreneur is self-motivated for financial gain, whereas some of your best leaders, if you think of the best world leaders, throughout history, they have been motivated by helping other people. And I guess in a way that's where I still perceive ourselves different than some entrepreneurs, in that our motivation was environmental, not financial. So entrepreneurs can be leaders, but I wouldn't say necessarily that all leaders are going to be entrepreneurs.
What do you think is the most difficult part about being an entrepreneur? Now, granted, you said at the beginning you don't see yourselves that way, but let's let's, for the sake of the argument, say you're reluctant or accidental entrepreneurs, doing what you're doing in the new business in particular, what's been the most difficult part of that journey? And I might start with you, Kath.
Ever since this started at the beginning of 2018 with the involvement in the Fish X program, one of the biggest challenges has been the old chicken versus egg or horse versus cart scenario. So we've wanted to make innovations, we've wanted to introduce things, but it's always a matter of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So you can't achieve certain things unless you've got financial backing, but you can't get the financial backing unless you've already achieved proof of concept, for example. And another standout is, and again we're talking about leaders, in a lot of the things where we've tried to become involved or we've applied for grants and funding, one of the big questions is always about the leadership team, and where we know how much we've put into this and how much we can get out of it. When you're putting on paper that you've got a plumber / fisherman who's working with a primary school teacher, that doesn't really cut the mustard with a lot of grand things, you know, whereas with other questions when we write about our pathway to market or our, what's that thing called, our business model, things like that, you know, we score really, really highly, but just getting people to believe in us has been quite challenging, I feel.
Yeah, I guess if I could lead on from that, like originally, you know, as Kath said, proof of concept, you know, we needed a box. We came up with a prototype version, early stage one, and then, you know, as soon as you started to air that to the market, the question would be, oh, how's it perform against polystyrene? And you go, oh, as good as. And there's disbelief in the market because, you know, nothing has. And so then you finally get to the point where you've made the product, which is even better than polystyrene thermally, and then you can showcase that in the test data with it. And then the next series of obstacles that the market brings up, which is, you know, price or this or that. So there's always barriers, and when you've knocked a couple down, the market tends to throw a couple back up. And so it's a progressive challenge, I guess. And with that challenge, you really need to have the faith and the belief in what you're doing, the enthusiasm, and, you know, to keep pushing that along. And when you get the no's, you know, which is typical of what entrepreneurs say, you just get up and keep doing business and have the vigor.
Yeah, again, the that response there, that persistence and continual drive to get your idea up, that's very much what entrepreneurs do. But yeah, no, that's interesting that the part of the journey is to try and build a degree of street cred with people that aren't in your industry. And I given that I'm not in your headspace and I've never taken the kind of risk that you have in my professional career, I just take it for granted that when you work in an industry, you build your street cred, and those around you know of your work and may or may not agree with everything you do, but they know you because you're in that industry. But branching out to a whole nother world, and the packaging world isn't just the seafood industry, to make claims that you're as good, if not better, than existing products, and you're more ecologically sustainable or more ecologically friendly than something that already exists. By way of example, you're going to get questions in the market, and the one thing they'll say was, well, who's making the claims? And it's a shame that you have to find other ways to present your credentials to get people to be convinced that you're genuine and fair income. But that, I guess that's with anything when you're building a business or you're building an idea, that you've got to take those roadblocks that will happen and deal with them, and then sort of move on. Because obviously with 2 years in the game in the business, you've obviously been able to power through. And my question would be, was that a big result of being just persistent with what you were doing?
I think what you're saying is correct within the industry. Within the actual seafood industry, the support has been phenomenal. You know, the number of people that signed up to participate in the box trial, the feedback that we've been receiving, and it has actually, you know, made people even more aware of our own product, the box aside. I guess my point was more where we have had to try to get some financial backing, and when you're dealing with people who are perhaps going to be investing, or with the government where you're applying for a grant, it is very, very difficult necessarily to convince people. And it reminds me of an event we were at, and the keynote speaker said, I invest in people, and it gave a very, very interesting speech. And then Tom, being Tom, went up and introduced himself to him, and we hooked up and we had a Zoom meeting, and the very, very first question he said was, well, I want to see the colour of your money. It's like, well, we thought you just said you invested in people.
Yeah, he only wanted to see the financials.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's disappointing. But again, it's they call the market a place of opportunity. So obviously there's going to be other opportunities down the track, and one person that thinks that way does not necessarily reflect everyone. And did you expect that there would be not a roadblock exactly, but did you expect that there would be challenges along the way?
What I'd like to say really is, you know, from early stage faith in the project, we've had two real believers in the project. One would be Oz Industry, that we were successful with our one and only real grant application, and the other one was Fisheries Research and Development Corporation. Without those two organisations, industries having faith in us, our journey would have been much different. So we greatly appreciate that, and that's got us to this point.
Yeah.
Oh, good. And I guess it demonstrates that you don't have to do it alone, and having allies and people that can help in that journey obviously has helped you guys. So that segues in nicely to the next question. How do you measure success?
Okay. Short term, I think the first day that we put our fish in our box and fly it to a leading chef somewhere in Australia is going to be a huge, significant achievement. And ultimately, we aim that will be this year.
It's not a financial measure of success. It's more getting your product out, because obviously you take pride in what you do as fisher people. So as much as you're trying to get away from fishing, it's never going to happen, because that's where it's at. And it's nice to hear that it's not just necessarily driven by the dollar. And you raised it before, that you can be a leader or an entrepreneur without necessarily having a financial endpoint there. And obviously, if you're getting into the game of packaging, that's going to be part of the business longer term. But yeah, so it sounds like small steps is what you value in this process. Does that ring true?
Yeah, absolutely, Eric, absolutely. Yeah, so for me, measure of success was we have it now because we actually have the finished box in its finished form. Nearly 40 of them have been sent out around Australia and overseas to interested companies. So for us, or for me personally, that's a success to see the product already out in the market, even though it hasn't got a sale price on it. I guess the real success, as Kath summarised, is when we actually put our fish in there shortly and actually fly it for its first flight. You know, the box looks wonderful, as the industry has said, looks the goods, and when you open it, it's perceived value that the product inside it is going to be more valuable because of the box it's transported in. And for us, that's a real statement of success.
Brilliant. So let me go back to a question. This one's around the capabilities of entrepreneurs. Now, in your context, I want to ask the following. What do you both think, and I'll start with Kath on this one, what do you both believe are the most critical capabilities needed by an entrepreneur? And I guess I'll preface this with, you've already suggested that persistence is one of those capabilities. Are there any others that come to mind, at least from your perspective?
Yes, definitely persistence. You got that one first up. Motivation. I think if you weren't motivated for the right reasons, it is such an uphill battle. you really need to be motivated for the right reasons, and it's the motivation which gives you the persistence. I think also you really do need to believe in yourself. You need to believe that you can do it and that you might not be there, but you will get there. I'm not there yet. So it's the power of yet.
Okay, brilliant. Tom?
Yeah, for me, I think really a real advantage is if you've got the personality that allows you to connect easily with others, because there's a lot of cold calling. You have to be able to strike up a rapport and develop that quite quickly. And so I think, if you've given that some of those traits in your DNA to start with, that puts you in a favourable position. There's a lot of variables in the whole process, but I think if you've got that, then you warm to people, they warm to you. We've found it already. A lot of companies don't actually provide assistance, but what they can do is provide connections to other companies, and they do that because of the warmth in the project, in yourself, and belief. And I think that's what's fueled this project.
Mm.
Yeah, it's amazing and interesting to someone like me who's interested in this question about leadership, to see two people working on it and complementing each other on the things that you look for as part of the business journey that you're on, and that it supports this idea that having two or more people with a big idea that's sharing the load in where that can go and working off each other's capabilities is important, because I would assume that you both bring different skill sets to your business, and if you were exactly the same, then that would be less effective than what you're talking about now. And just and for those listening, that obviously this is audio, but I can see Tom and Kath laughing at that. Again, knowing these two entrepreneurs the way that I do, I get the sense that it's a team sale in what you're doing, and it's not one person or the other. And that's a measure, to me, that's a measure of success in a business, that the risk is being shared amongst two people rather than the one person having to think about, well, if this goes, it's on me. Having someone else there is quite an interesting dynamic, and I'm assuming that most of the entrepreneurs that I'll be talking to in later podcasts have done it for themselves, but having a couple is an interesting dynamic, because again, you've got someone to shoot ideas off, but also if things go to poo, you've also got that argument ready to go instantly in that space. So look, this segues nicely into another set of statements that I've got here, and I think I know where you're going to go with these, but I'm not you, so I'll put these to you both. Entrepreneurs are risk takers.
I guess, look, the current tragic situation with COVID, a lot of people that had presumed secure jobs don't have that employment at the moment. So I guess the thought around what is risk. So yes, perceived being an entrepreneur, new venture is risky. Obviously the status quo has inherent risk now. So I guess it's an interesting question. I guess it depends on where you're looking as to how big that risk might be. For us, or for myself personally, I don't actually see a lot of risk in the project. So that's just my opinion.
So Kath, do you view that differently?
I guess it's interesting, because when you talk about entrepreneurs and you talk about leaders, and in a side conversation previously, Tom and I were discussing, well, you've got effective leaders and you've got ineffective leaders, and you've got successful entrepreneurs and you've got many more small startups that fail than succeed. So I would agree with Tom that there is an element of risk in becoming an entrepreneur, but I would say the successful entrepreneurs manage the risk. So they would analyze it and strategize so that they still have a chance of succeeding, but I guess minimizing the risk to themselves personally.
Sure. No, that's brilliant. Entrepreneurs are persistent.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely persistent and need to be able to bounce back.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, yes.
Brilliant. Entrepreneurs are innovators.
Well, as I said at the very beginning, Eric, I would say that we are more innovators than entrepreneurs. As you say, I also apparently gave the textbook definition of entrepreneurs. So in our case, we aim to be innovators. And I guess most entrepreneurs are innovators to a certain extent.
Yeah, I guess for me in our situation, I sort of view it slightly differently because we've got a product. Like some entrepreneurs, there's systems in place and whatever, and some entrepreneurs manage those systems better, whether it's online trading, e-commerce, whatever. So they're just making a system more streamlined. They get advantage from that. But for us, it's simply about a product. We had a need, we've got the product, now we're moving a product to market. So I guess, the innovation space is what developed the products.
When you're looking at an innovator as opposed to being innovative, I guess, again, and Tom alluded to the current situation with COVID-19, which we all know is having global ramifications, and I believe everybody is demonstrating a certain degree of innovation just in their day-to-day lives. People are thinking differently, people are working differently, businesses are changing their business model on the run. We're seeing an increase in e-commerce, we're seeing an increase in people working from home. When school goes back next week, parents are going to have to be incredibly innovative in assisting with their children's learning at home. So I guess, Eric, comes back to, as I've said previously, necessity is the mother of all invention, and everybody has a degree of innovative ability. It just depends on their motivation and their need and their desire, I guess, to act on that and how it can impact on others. And in our situation, ultimately how it can impact on the world, as we say, protecting the planet one box at a time.
Again, could talk about this for hours, but it's one of those areas of research for me that needs ongoing investigation, because I'm still not convinced, and this isn't from our discussion, but from what I see more generally around the topic of leadership, that innovation is still it's a topic that's not defined well at times, and what is innovation for one person might be run-of-the-mill operation for another, and that's not to denigrate one person or another. It's just that I think the definition needs to be explored more. But anyway, that's not what we're here to do. So entrepreneurs are strategic thinkers.
We've done an assessment in our project on what the market use is and all those sort of things. So then we're positioned where the project might lie, what the manufacturing outputs might be required, and those sorts of things. So early stage, we collected a fair amount of data. That's a collective collection through, the people that are involved in the project as well. Because like a lot of these things, and I'll make a specific example, like polystyrene, it's hard to get a handle on actually how many boxes are used around the world. Hard to get a handle on how many are used in the industry. So I guess you need to have a very forward-thinking approach, strategic, collecting the data, and a lot of it is about, it's all data-driven, So
I agree with Tom. I would add, though, to a certain extent, Tom is a very, very strategic thinker. He's an excellent chess player, and he's actually made the analogy himself of our journey with a good game of chess. And it's all a strategy. Getting investment is a strategy. Looking at how we're going to do our product launch is a strategy. And again, that has changed within the last month or so, again, because of COVID. What we had planned as our, big release may not happen. It might look completely different now.
Kath and Tom, I appreciate your time. Now, there'll be more of these podcasts in the future. So thanks, everyone, for listening, and thanks, Kath and Tom.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Eric.
Cheers, guys.